What's up, family? This week on the podcast, I had the pleasure of getting to speak with a young woman named Christine Schulze. We talk about so many amazing things like mental health, things that she wished she knew before she published her book. We talk about her wedding and lots of fun stuff. Christine is the author of a lot of books, but right now she is re-releasing a book called Prelude of Fire. And then she's currently going through edits for the second and third book, I believe. So yeah, she's a really good writer, and I just loved having this conversation with her. She had a lot of wisdom, including things like that new authors would like to know about publishing and writing and all of that fun stuff. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi, Christine E. Schulze. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, hi. It's good to see you face to face, and thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited. I had the privilege of reading Prelude of Fire as an ARC reader, and it was really well written. I was very impressed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. There's been a lot of work gone into it in the past several months. So
yeah, you were mentioning on Instagram that you had even done some edits after your ARC readers had mentioned stuff.
yeah, so that wasn't expected, but what had happened with this book and two other books in the series is they were previously with this other smaller publisher. Unfortunately, that just ended up being a very negative experience. So then when I left them last year with intention to start republishing this year, I worked with my editor. We've been together personally for like 12 years, so she's great. And we did a ton of edits on it, so it was already a lot better just from that. But then with the ARC readers, it was super helpful to see, okay, so me and my editor fixed a lot of stuff. We added a lot of great new content to fix a lot of stuff. But there were chapters that were kind of longer and just some like little things like that the ARC readers really helped to point out. So I went back, did another edit of it. The book's the same, the story's the same, but just to cut it down to make it flow better and hopefully be even better for future readers as well. So
yeah. Would you say that your writing is more character motivated or storyline motivated?
I kind of want to say both, especially looking at this book, because there is definitely an overarching plot. You've got the king setting the world on fire essentially, and they have to figure out how to stop that. But then there's also a lot of internal character growth that happens with multiple characters. So I really feel like it's both, in my opinion.
Great. Okay, let me get my questions up.
Sure.
My favorite question to ask people is, who was the most challenging character to write?
Oh boy. Maybe the answer to that, especially with doing the fresh edits with my editor, could in part be the main character, Ashley herself. And the reason I say that is because when I had like for example, one of my older friends had read the book before we re-edited it. And she was like, I enjoy Ashley, but I don't get a really good feel for her as a character. So I do think that in the past, sometimes one of my things is when I write my main characters, they don't have as much characterization because it's kind of like, the reader kind of putting themselves in that character. They're kind of like a video game avatar a little bit. And so I kind of had to flesh her out more. Whereas the side characters kind of came to me more naturally as far as their different flaws and quirks and character growth. So I wouldn't say that there was a character that was super difficult to write, but probably fleshing Ashley out more was something I had to think about more. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Who was your favorite character to write?
Oh boy. I probably have a few favorites, but one of my favorites is Chamblin. I think that he's adorable. Obviously, for people who have read the book, he's a bard. He's blind, but that doesn't stop him from, relearning how to do things and being an explorer and doing what he loves. And he's just very quirky, but also at the same time very warm and caring. And so he's definitely a favorite of mine, for sure. So
yeah. Do you have a character that you feel has the most of your personality?
Um, Not okay, that's a good question. So not necessarily as much in this book, which is the first in the series. Although, as I've been editing books 2 and 3, um, there's a character, Leia, which is in book 1, but not as much, right? But then we get some backstory more on her in books 2 and 3. And I would say that there's a lot of experiences with her that kind of parallel my own. You know, she has to leave this bad family situation and escape and start over. And so there are some things that kind of parallel there. And then even in book 3, there's a couple other of the female characters that I would say are similar to me. So, but for book 1, I would say Leia, even though we don't see her quite as much until learn more about her in the later books.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Good to know. What inspired you to write Prelude of Fire?
Okay, so a few different things. I do like to say that the book was like the original old draft was inspired. Because I'm in my 30s now, about to get married, but this was originally the original draft was written back when I was in college. So a number of years, and that original draft was inspired by Lord of the Rings, which some people have said is kind of like a young adult Lord of the Rings because you've got this big epic found family quest going on. The Legend of Zelda, which is my favorite game series, is definitely an inspiration because that inspired a lot of my writing back then for sure. Also with the elements of musical magic, playing that game was the first time that I ever had the idea of like, wow, there could be magical songs. That's pretty cool. But then on a more personal level, the book was inspired, again, like I said, I was in college and I was taking these music classes from a teacher who had, her name wasn't Leia, but she inspired the character of Leia. And since I was going through a difficult time in my life, college was kind of for me like Harry Potter going to Hogwarts. This is kind of my home right now. It's a safe place. Her classes were a safe place. So she inspired the character of Leia and also inspired, again, more of that idea of, since I took her music classes, let's create musical magic is one of the things in the book. So several different inspirations there for the book.
Nice. I definitely got some like Aragon feels too. Just kind of like the forest and the mythical creatures. It just kind of felt very adventure-y for sure.
I like
And
that.
I liked that.
Yeah. And speaking of magical creatures, everybody loves the bat, and I really appreciate that. So
Yeah. Are you a big bat fan? Is that why she makes it in there?
I've always just loved animals in general. I don't even think that bats are like my top favorite, even though I like them. And it's kind of funny because, like I said, I've worked with my editor for years, and she's great. She has so many good suggestions and has really helped me develop a lot of different things. But she's not a fan of bats, and she had been like, "Christy, a different creature." And I said, no, Kira, you don't understand. Other people will think the bat's adorable, and thankfully they do. So it's like it's funny. It's like the one thing that we didn't agree on that I'm like, nope, I keep this. So
That is funny. I had a friend, I have a friend, and when we were going through college, our college years, she was like, obsessed with bats.
okay.
And she never wanted to watch Star Wars. And the only way I got her to watch Star Wars was because there was a bat character in it. And she was like, I'm sold. Let's watch it. And I was like,
Nice.
so there are bad people, like when you commit, you commit. Okay, has it been difficult re-releasing your book as an indie author, or was it more fun?
Well, sometimes you go through a bad experience, and I think that gives you like a different perspective. So for me personally, I feel like it's been fun, right? So dealing with the old publisher, just, bad edits and things that they said they were going to market that they didn't, unfortunately, like rude correspondence with the publisher, just things that you didn't want to put up with. So for me, leaving and starting over and having some experience, like I do have some older books that are self-published, so it's not like I didn't know how to at least do the basics, right? So for me, it's been a fun process, getting onto Instagram, which is where I've met a lot of my great art readers, deciding, hey, just for the fun of it, I'm going to try my first Kickstarter campaign and see how that goes. that ended up being successful. Folks, did get the special edition of the book. So that was encouraging of like, oh, people are actually interested in this. And it was also a lot of work, especially again, since I'm getting married next month. I don't know why I decided to do all of this at once, but also very fun. So even if there's a lot to do and there's still definitely a lot to learn as far as like the marketing angle of it, I would say it's been more fun because I've had that freedom of, well, at least I'm not with those people anymore and can do my own thing and talk to actually nice people like yourself. So,
Well, thank you. Okay. Have you noticed a change in like, since you said you self-published a few books a while ago, have you noticed a change between it being a published, like between publishing now and back then?
So I definitely I guess I would at least say that just since leaving the bad publisher, I've definitely been a little bit more confident about just trying to learn to do more things on my own. I think that one of the reasons I went with the publisher is because, a lot of authors, like, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want a publisher you think is going to be good for your books, right? And I think one of the hopes was that they would help like market my books and such. And unfortunately that didn't happen. So I do think that I think that maybe before I was kind of scared to try the marketing stuff, like, oh, what if I'm no good at this type of thing? I think a lot of people feel like that in different aspects of like the writing process. But I have noticed that, no, we just got to try new things. We just have to do it. And so I'm at least more confident about like, let's learn some new things. And so that's at least one difference, is just kind of getting out there and trying new things more.
That's good. I had someone on my podcast. She said that like indie authors are booming right now, and it's the process is like way better than it was back then. So I was just curious if you had noticed anything about the process.
Well, I think I don't know if that's hard for me to say because like I said, I do have older books that are self-published, but I didn't ever really try to like do a lot with them,
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if I can speak as much on that. Like the most that I ever really did was go to like some in-person, craft shows and like other events to sell books that way, which was always fun, but I didn't really try to do a lot, with them before. So yeah, so this is me trying to be actually, let's get serious, not just with the writing and editing, but with the whole process.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
What is one piece of advice you would give to a new writer, or I guess a writer in general?
So as far as writing in general, I know some people can get, for example, really overwhelmed with the idea of writing a book, especially if they've never done that before. And for me, I do have anxiety, so I can understand these things. And for me, for writing, as well as with other things, but especially for my writing, I think a really good, useful tip is to always break things down into steps. Because I feel like if you're like, wow, I want to write this 500-page book, or hey, I want to write this 4-book series, that could seem very overwhelming. Whether I'm writing or whether I'm editing, I will have like a small daily goal that I know that I can reach. And then when you reach that goal, you feel like, okay, I accomplished something. And if you feel like you accomplished something, that builds momentum for the next day, for the next day, for the next day. So right now I'm editing book 3 of the series, and I'm able to just say, hey, I'm just editing 1 chapter a day. I do work full time, so I've got to make something that sounds manageable. But then when I reach that, I feel good. I'm like, okay, great. We're set up great for the next day. So I think that breaking things down into steps, even if it's small steps, but steps that you feel like I can achieve this, will really help motivate and just keep going. And then obviously, eventually, you will have a whole book.
Yeah. Do you feel like I feel like you have a unique perspective because you've been with an unhealthy publisher. Do you have any red flags that you would tell people to avoid?
Yes. And so some of those, in retrospect, feel like they should have been obvious. But again, if you're kind of new to it, maybe not, So a pretty big one that I think a lot of people are aware of, but some might not be, is, a publisher charging money. Publishers should be paying the authors, period. there are good hybrid companies out there that will charge money for edits and stuff like that that are decent, but they're much rarer than the people who are charging money and just scamming you, essentially. So if you're offered a publishing contract and they are charging money, especially a large amount of money, I would discourage doing that at all, but at least do your thorough research. You know, there's a lot of places that you can plug into Google and it might come up with like people talking about this is not a good company. Don't go with them. If nothing comes up, maybe you also don't want to go with them because there's nothing on, that could, so for sure that's a big red flag. I know that people, I understand that urge of, oh, I just want to be published, but a lot of times that's just not a good situation. And then also just kind of the quality of work. When I started with my publisher, this should have also been a red flag, but I was just starting out with them. The quality of edits was not good. And then there was just a lot of issues with covers. There were a lot of issues with little things that like should have been, the publisher should have known what they were doing and they didn't. So if you get that kind of inkling of like, they don't really seem like they know what they're doing, you might just want to cut your losses and leave at that point. But for sure, the money thing's a big thing. I know that a lot of people, including myself, get trapped in that. And then you've wasted a lot of money, and then you're also wasting time because your book's not really getting the help it needs. It can be better to spend that money on your own editor, your own cover, your own stuff where you're working with somebody who's doing a good job.
Wow, I had no idea. I've actually had like emails from people who are like, we'd love to publish a book for you. And I don't write books, at least not yet. But they always charge money. So I'm glad I didn't say yes.
Don't do that. don't do that. And also no reputable publisher is going to reach out to any author because they're too busy, like you have to submit to them or have an agent and submit to them. So for sure, those are most likely people just trying to get people's money, unfortunately.
Wow, interesting. Well, good to know. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay, how could you promote your book in 5 sentences or less?
Oh, that's a tough call there. All right. So I would say that Prelude of Fire is a young adult epic fantasy with found family. So if you love epic quests like Lord of the Rings, where you have a bunch of people coming together, you'll probably love this book. It's also got some Legend of Zelda vibes, a little bit of, splash of Harry Potter and Narnia vibes, according to other readers. And it's now available for pre-order in both Kindle and paperback, with the paperback being at a discounted price while it's in this pre-order stage. And the paperback also has cool black and white illustrations that the Kindle doesn't have. So that's pretty cool as well. And the last thing I would say is I'm getting married on September 21st. So I kind of have this cool, fun goal of trying to reach 50 pre-orders by that date. And that's just, just for fun. So yeah, I hope that's that's a good, good summary.
What are you at right now for your pre-orders?
So that's interesting. I don't think I'm going to be able to tell that right away because apparently so this is something brand new to me as well. I've always published on Amazon. Well, with Amazon, you can do Kindle pre-orders, but you can't do paperback pre-orders. They just don't allow that at this time. So I went through Ingram Spark, which will then put the book on Amazon. So I'm doing paperback pre-orders through them instead, which is my very first time doing that. And it seems like there's a delay on them showing what the pre-order numbers are. So I've had a few people say to me, hey, I pre-ordered. So I know that it's happened, but I can't tell you yet the number because it's still currently a mystery to me until they give me this number. But I know we've had a few, which is great. So, that's better than having none. So that's good.
Yeah. Okay, so we wouldn't order through Amazon. We would need to go to your link to order it.
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously just look up the book on Amazon, Prelude of Fire. Okay. On my Instagram, like, yes, I do also have that link that you can go to directly. But yeah, if you were just to look up Prelude of Fire on Amazon. Now, one thing important for me to probably say with that is the old version that was with the old publisher is still on Amazon. I think it's out of print. I don't think there's any more print copies. But unfortunately, that's just not something that I'm able to remove. Once a book is published, even if it says out of print, it's just kind of there forever. Now, I think you would figure that out pretty quickly because the newer one has the better cover, and it has no reviews on it yet because it hasn't come out yet. But if you did see both versions, go with the one with the better cover. That's the right one that you want to have. So
good to know. Good to know. Do you have any inspirational people or authors that made you want to write?
Yeah, I've probably mentioned a couple already. I know I've said Lord of the Rings a couple of times. So read that when I was 14. So that for sure. Tolkien. Do you like some Tolkien? I do like to say, well, and another one of my favorite books is The Neverending Story, which that author is Michael Ende. He didn't really write a ton of books, but that's obviously a popular one because of the movie. I loved the movie as a kid, then read the book, super whimsical, love it. Loved Narnia as a kid, loved Harry Potter. And then I like to say that one of my favorite overall authors is Diana Wynne Jones. She wrote Howl's Moving Castle, which people might know by the book or the movie. And she wrote a ton of other. I just like how her books are always have like normal fantasy elements, like Howl's a wizard, but then like she has so many other unique elements. And I feel like that's kind of what I like to do as an author, just create like those unique elements. Not that I don't like a story about just elves and dwarves like Tolkien, but I also like to kind of do my own thing, like in Prelude of Fire, where you have like the elves who walk on water, or you have the sprites and their bats, kind of like more, my own thing. And I feel like she does her own thing with a lot of those elements. And so she's definitely one of my favorites as well.
Nice. Okay, so with Tolkien, do you feel like it's the way he writes, or was it the way that you felt connected to the world? Is that why you like fantasy?
I do think that it's probably I do like his writing, that's true. But it is probably being connected to the worlds. Like I mentioned, I grew up in some tough situations. So I think having that escape is good, and also that's kind of part of what I do is create these worlds that hopefully people can escape to, in a good way. So yeah, and just I like writing fantasy because it is so limitless. Like I'll read other genres of books, but I like being able to just have unlimited imagination. So I think that I probably, for the most part, will probably only write fantasy for that reason.
Yeah. Do you like Brandon Sanderson?
I think that I probably would like Brandon Sanderson, and I have not got to read him because let me tell you, I have not had time to properly read a lot. I have plenty of books, like I have a shelf right behind me. I have plenty of books that I do want to read, but between working full time, writing full time, and then getting married and all the things, like I just haven't had time to ever pick up one of his works. But from the sound of it, I think that I would enjoy his work.
Yeah. I haven't read him either, so don't worry, you're not behind in my book.
Okay.
I started reading fantasy when I was like 9, 10-ish, and I actually had a chronic illness. And so for
Okay.
me it was an escape from the things that I was suffering and like the
Yeah.
pain that I was experiencing. But it was also the inspirational characters and the way that they would work through their problems that was
Yeah, for
helpful
sure.
for me, because in my real life, I was having to make choices like, I don't want to go to school today, or I don't really feel very good. How am I going to be a positive person? Or how am I just going to get through the day? And so I would really lean on those inspirational messages that those characters were giving me because their life is usually pretty hard, but they always make it through.
Yeah, that's it. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've read Prelude. Some characters go through some pretty pretty
They
serious
do.
things. Yeah, and like I said, there are characters later on that I connect, relate to more as to them going through those difficult situations and deciding like, well, what am I going to choose? Am I going to choose to still follow the right path, even though it's difficult? How am I going to deal with these situations I've been placed in? So yeah, that's a good thing too to be inspired by.
Yeah, that's why I wanted you on the podcast, is because I think you have written some very inspirational characters. But I also
Thank
like
you.
that you, yeah, I also like that you mentioned, or like you allow the characters to go through choices of, am I going to still be good? Am I going to still believe in good? Or am I going to not? You know, you give them
Right.
that choice to also make, I guess, moral choices, not just choices about what they'll do, but also what they're going to value.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we'll definitely see that even more in book 2. Since, like I said, that's you get a lot of backstory on Leia, but also, the villain from book 1. So obviously we get to see, well, some people made some very good choices and some people chose to be villains, and go down that. So it's interesting to see both ways how people can choose different things, in different circumstances. So
Yeah, I definitely, one thing that I've always noticed, because I really like Disney princess movies, and
mhm.
one thing I've always noticed is that the villain and the princess usually go through difficult circumstances, but they
Right,
make totally different choices. You know,
right.
the hero of the story, the hero or the heroine usually makes a choice to not be a victim, right? To see
Right,
their
right.
problems as just that, problems that they need to grow through. Whereas the villain usually is causing problems because they're in so much pain that they
Mm-hmm.
choose to continue to look at themselves like they're a victim. So for me,
Yeah,
it was very insightful to how we all have problems. It's just what choices are we going to make
right.
through those? You know, are you going to grow through them or are you going to just wallow in them? You know?
Yeah. I really think that that's a through line for at least for this series.
Oh
You
yeah.
have a lot of characters that, again, like they could really go either way. What are they going to do? Yeah. So
Yeah. I like that. So you already mentioned one of your favorite books is The Never-Ending Story. You really like Lord of the Rings. Is there
mhm.
any book you haven't mentioned that is on your top 5 list?
Let's see. So we've had, yeah, Lord of the Rings, Neverending Story. Well, I mentioned Diana Wynne Jones, okay, and a lot of people again know her for like Howl's Moving Castle. Again, even if they've only seen the movie, which they're both great versions. I really love her book called Dog's Body. I don't know why. I just love that book so much. It's a standalone book. It's pure and fanciful and fun. It's about this star. So like in this book, stars are also, they're people in a way. They're real. They're real. They're not just stars. They're actual. I don't know if people's probably not quite the right word, but they're their own beings that they can talk and everything to each other. Um, and the star gets falsely accused, and then he gets sent down to Earth as punishment in the body of a dog. And I remember just reading this premise as a kid thinking like, wow, I really love this. And then I didn't find the book again for years later. And then I did, and I read it and I love it so much. And I just tell everybody to go read that book, even though they can't all love it as much as me. But I just love that book. I love that book a lot. And so my very first, I know that I mentioned Narnia, but that was my first, as far as I remember, Narnia was my first fantasy series. I remember going to the library with my grandma, and I think I picked them up because I had seen like the cartoon version of the movie on TV. So those are probably pretty important to me, just because, like I said, I think that was probably my first intro really to reading fantasy books. Um, yeah. So, but Dog's Body, everybody go read it. Just go do it.
Perfect. I'm gonna pick it up. I think I don't it's not the same premise, but oh gosh, who is he? I'll have to look it up, but there's another person who wrote from a dog's perspective. But actually there's a lot of people. What am I saying? I'm silly.
Yeah.
I like one of my favorites is Wrinkle in Time. Have you read that book?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Yeah,
for
I
sure.
really like how she took heavenly elements and made them fantastical, you know, kind of gave it a
Mhm.
fantasy feel. That was interesting to me because my
Yeah.
whole life I was homeschooled. So my whole life reading fantasy wasn't really encouraged unless it was Christian. And
Hmm.
it's super interesting because Wrinkle in Time, she puts a lot of Christian elements in her book. But like people were like, "Oh, that book's so weird. Don't read it. You shouldn't read it." I'm like, "It's a classic. There's a cherubim."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
No, that's
always
that.
interesting to me.
Yeah, well then we're kind of similar. So I grew up in Christian schools, which was very similar to homeschooling because just the way it was set up. And yeah, we weren't really allowed to read anything. Now my mom didn't care. My mom was okay with me reading Lord of the Rings and all of that, but school wise, you weren't supposed to. But definitely with my upbringing, I definitely always appreciated, Christian elements being seen in fantasy like that. I thought that was really cool as well. This is a side topic kind of, but for Wrinkle in Time, have you seen the old movie from the 80s?
I have not. I didn't even know there was one, but I will watch it now.
Yeah, so I didn't personally like not that you can't watch it, but I didn't personally like the new movie they made a few years ago because I thought it was pretty and flashy, but just didn't really contain like the really core elements, like those important spiritual or character, like the really deep stuff. I didn't feel like it came across with that really well. But even though the graphics from the 80s version are obviously wild because it was from the 80s, so some of the fantasy stuff, looks scary, but I really appreciated it because I thought that they really captured the book well, in my opinion. So it might be something fun for you to check out.
Yeah, I love the 80s. I love the 80s. I have like a
Yeah.
whole I have a whole book of CDs, or not CDs, DVDs, and there's like tons of 80s ones. And it's funny because my husband likes to make fun of me. He's like, "You're such a nerd." I'm like, you married me.
Yeah.
Apparently you like nerds because you married me. What is your favorite thing about Prelude of Fire? Like the
Ooh.
thing you're most proud of?
Um, well, I'm definitely proud of how far it's come, for one thing. Again, we already talked about this, so I don't need to belabor it, but like leaving the publisher and re-editing it, I think that the characters are more fleshed out, the world's more fleshed out. So I am proud definitely of being able to really like make it more on par with books 2 and 3, which I think are just better by default because I was a more seasoned writer by then. So that's glad that we were able to make some improvements in that regard. Um, Other than that, I think that I do really like that it takes part of its inspiration from Zelda and that you just have this magical world full of people and creatures that maybe you've never seen in another book before. Maybe you've never seen a kingdom inside a pyramid that floats on the ocean. Like, well, that's pretty cool. Maybe you've never seen, people, like I said, who can like dance on the water or, all these different fantastic elements that just feel very whimsical, feel very adventurous, but feel like they pay an homage in a way to Zelda being like the original inspiration way back in the day.
Yeah. Do you feel like this book has gotten to grow with you as you've matured as a person?
I would say that's also fair to say, yeah. Since the original draft was like back when I was like 18, 19, and then which that draft was really something else. And then so essentially, even though it hasn't been continuous, right? Essentially, I've been working on it for like 17, 18 years, and just like I've gotten to be free from that publisher and, kind of move on and grow and heal from that. Like the book has also kind of risen from the ashes, undergone all these fresh edits, all this fresh, rebuilding. And so I definitely think that it's grown with me, and probably more than the other two books. Because, like I said, those were written later, which shows because they were easier to edit because they weren't as bad on the first draft. But yeah, I think this book has probably grown with me, just like the main character Ashley grows throughout the book.
Hmm. I love that. That's so
Yeah,
cool. Because you've gotten to like take it from different editors and you've gotten to take it from different experiences and you've grown and experienced new things and you're like, I want to add this now. That's
yeah, for
cool.
sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Uh, oh, you seem like a really cool person with a lot of
Thank you.
experience. Do you have like any advice that you would give to someone who's maybe in a difficult season or anything like that?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Like just like a difficult season of life in general, like
Yeah, or just
anything.
something that maybe helped you through your past. I don't know.
Yeah, well, obviously, writing books was helpful, but we can't expect everybody to go out. Although I do think that creative outlets can be helpful in general. Like if you have that creative like urge, I think that, you know, writing or drawing or singing or whatever can really help you like work through and process some stuff.
Mm.
There's one book that I wrote. This is just one of my standalones. It's called One Starry Night. It's like one of my few books that's more romantic-y because it's more focused on the romantic pairing. I mean, I do have romances in a lot of my books, but that's not necessarily the main focus. But that one really helped me like heal from like an unrequited love, like this relationship that I really, you know, with a friend of mine that I was really in love with. And that's a whole story we don't need to go into. But writing that I think definitely helped me with healing. I think it definitely helped me like learn and realize some things even about myself with that book. Um, but again, I don't expect everybody to go out and write a book. So more practical information would also be to try to, you know, just seek out counsel. And that
Mm.
doesn't have to be a counselor or a therapist. It certainly can be. But, you know, one of my problems was at some point I was kind of isolated. And then once I was finally in a new job where I could be around people and make some friends and have people to talk to and see like, oh, this situation is not good. You should get out of it. So like seeking counsel from whoever you trust, doesn't have to be a counselor. And then obviously for me personally with, you know, I'm a Christian and, you know, some of my books do have those Christian elements of forgiveness or redemption or good versus evil or making those choices, you know, just certain elements
Mm.
that are inspired by my faith. Definitely my faith growing up was definitely one of the biggest things that kept me encouraged. And just having that relationship with God, I think I would have turned out much differently. And not to say that I still didn't have, you know, healing to do. Like I go
Mm-hmm.
to therapy now. I do therapy for PTSD and anxiety and other things, but that faith definitely helped keep me strong and also helped me, I think, from becoming more bitter towards people who did me wrong or other things that I'm glad that, you know, I didn't have that experience, you know, I was able to grow out of those things. So yeah, those are definitely all helpful things for sure.
Mm. Great. I actually, those are really great. I was sequestered in the house for over a year. I couldn't
Okay.
leave or anything. And it's because my immune system was so bad that like I
Yeah.
couldn't even get out of bed. And it's interesting the things that matter to you when
Yeah.
you can't leave the house, you know? You slowly start to gain a new perspective of what really matters, you know? So it is interesting to see how people make choices to continue to go on living and learn how to thrive instead of
Yeah.
survive, you know? It's
Yeah, for
great.
sure.
And then they write a book and you feel
Yeah.
connected to their characters because they've been through
Yeah.
something.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I think creative outlets are very important. I think it's why we have so many trauma people taking like dance classes or learning
For
how to
sure.
paint, you know, and they find a way to cope or release all of the tension that they haven't been able to. So
For
being
sure.
creative is very important.
Yeah, it's a way of communicating how you feel if you can't like actually talk about it or whatever. You know, it's a different way of
Hmm.
getting that out. So
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So I'm curious about your
yes.
wedding because you're getting
Yeah.
married. Are you having like a fantasy themed wedding?
In a way, yes. So I decided not to go. I mean, we totally probably could have, but I decided not to go like, you know, full on cosplay because just different reasons. But we are having so like our wedding invitations and a lot of our decorations have like a Zelda theme. Like my half of things is kind of like Zelda, and then Isaac, my fiance, his half of things is Star Wars. Now he loves Zelda too, so that's not an issue, but he wanted to like get lightsabers for all his guys, you know, all his groomsmen and for him. So we kind of have both of those elements going on. My dress is, like I said, it's a normal dress. It's not like a cosplay or anything, but to me, it gives me a little bit of Zelda vibes, a little bit of, you know, Cinderella from the 2015 movie, which is, I absolutely love, a little bit of those vibes. gives me a little bit of Phantom of the Opera vibes, which is another one of my favorite things. So I like it because it gives me a fantasy feel without, but still being like a regular dress, and it twirls really nice, which is really important to me. And then we also, yeah, and then like the music, for example, like for the wedding, I have a friend who's playing guitar, and then she has a friend who's playing the flute, and so we are having music from Zelda and Star Wars, but like in the one theme from Howl's Moving Castle, even, but like without having like in a more classical, classical way. So we do definitely have plenty of fantasy elements going on for sure.
Nice. My husband and
Yeah.
I, we got married in Disney World. It was
Okay.
quite the ordeal. Yeah.
I'm
We
ready.
but one of the things like he had all of he got links. I think that's what they're cufflinks. And they're
Okay. Yes.
everyone got like a Star Wars cufflink. And then our
Nice.
theme was our theme was Beauty and the Beast because that's me, Beauty and the Beast. That is my
Top tier
movie.
one.
hmm So that was our theme for our wedding. So I appreciate fantasy
Yes.
weddings.
Yeah.
And like my husband's a huge Lord of the Rings fan. So when he
Okay.
was walking down the aisle, I used the theme. I think it's like
Okay.
considering hobbits or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then me walking down the aisle was the Beauty and the Beast theme. So
Okay.
we
Good.
yeah. But it was all classic. It was I think we had like a live organist or something, and so she
That's
just
cool.
played. Yeah. It was really
That's really
cool.
cool.
Yeah. And then we took everyone to Disney. Not
Right?
like
That's very
we
cool.
didn't we didn't pay for it. They had to pay for themselves, but we had fun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I also put together a playlist for during dinner, and that's all fantasy, like from different fantasy films or games or whatever. But again, with like a little bit more classical feel to it. Because I kind of wanted to feel like, okay, we're in like a medieval feast, but also, having these fantasy themes playing. So yeah.
Nice, nice. Is your venue like fantasy themed?
We're gonna, okay, yeah, okay, sorry to think about that for a second. So the first event, so where we're getting married, me and Isaac were getting married at this place called Willoughby Farms, and I chose that place because we love going there. It's a place that's just for the two of us. I had never taken any like past boyfriend or whatever there, so like it's like really important. Like this is our place, right? And so to me, outside can already be fantastic. So, they do have a garden nearby. I don't know if there'll be a lot growing in September, but it is there. There's a nice garden nearby. We're getting married outside underneath like this white, arbor type of thing. So for me, that's magical enough. Love that, love being outdoors. And then for the reception, so I work at a place where we support adults with autism and other developmental disabilities. And one of the things we have is this really cool day program site where they come to do activities. It's this big pole barn building. So my boss is letting us use that for the reception for free, which is super cool. And again, we also have like a garden out there, and we'll decorate with lights and stuff. So we're gonna make it magical, and it's also free, which is great. And it's also important emotionally because I love that job. I've been there for 10 years.
Mm.
So yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm so excited for you. Yeah, marriage is the hardest and the best thing you'll ever do. I'm sure you've been told that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It knows how to humble you, let me tell you.
That's probably true, especially for me. Yeah, I've already had that experience in a few things, even just being with Isaac, especially
hmm
also being an only child. Not saying that I was like a
Oh
spoiled
yeah.
brat, but either just different perspectives of being an only child versus having siblings or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, I come from a family of five. I have four
Okay.
brothers, and then my husband
Okay.
has one brother. And let me tell
Okay.
you, it's definitely you have different experiences. Like his house is always quiet whenever we have
Mm,
something here. Actually, yeah, whenever we have something at my family's house, so loud. Like
Yeah.
just off the walls loud.
Yeah.
Everyone's having fun, everyone's doing something crazy, talking over each other. And then you go to his house and you're like eating in silence. It's like just such a different experience.
Right?
Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, I think that because most people marry someone that they're not exactly like, and they
Mm-hmm.
have different experiences and stuff. So it
Yeah.
teaches you to see the world in new ways, but it also teaches you to love someone
Mm.
when you would also like to karate chop them in the throat.
Yeah, that's good. Yes.
I heard someone say once that like when you get married, well when you first start dating, they have
Mm-hmm.
traits and attributes that you really enjoy. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
get married, those same traits and attributes are the exact thing that annoy you because you're around them all the time. So it's
Yeah.
interesting because you have to be like, okay, I love this person and I love that they're doing this. It's just really annoying right now. But I don't know. I love being married and I'm sure you will too. I'm sure that'll be super fun to have an adventure buddy.
I think
It's
so.
just,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, we've already had many good adventures, so
Hmm.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wish you the best. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Cool. Thanks for having me again. I haven't done a lot of these. I've just kind of like dipped my toes in for fun, but this is probably the funnest one I've done. So this has been a great time.
Well, thank you.
Yay! Isn't she so fun? One thing that I really hope that you and I can do is everybody go pre-order a copy of Prelude of Fire. Let's get this girl to 100 pre-orders, yeah? Her goal was 50 by her wedding, but we can pass that. We can get there. We can get to 100 pre-orders and we can get her some support, yeah? Her book comes out in a month, I believe. So yeah, let's go love on her. You can also follow her. You can use the link below to go and follow her. Give her some support that way. And you can even check out her on Goodreads. You can check out Prelude of Fire there to see if it is your jam. It was definitely my jam. It felt a lot like Aragon, which I say in the podcast and stuff. So yeah, great book. Loved it. Anyways, you guys are so loved. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like this episode if you enjoyed it. Hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. And subscribe to my channel so you can see everything that happens. Love you guys so much. Bye.